Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Shark, your live stream podcast about all things pop culture. I'm your line.
I'm
Can you not
Caleb.
hear me, Caleb?
No. Oh man, we're off to a great start.
Yeah,
And I'm
it's our best
Caleb.
start yet. we have a very special guest with us today. Chunko is with us. Chunko, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just sort of, living by the moment.
That is great. How are you doing today? Caleb?
I'm doing good. You keep cutting in and out. This is gonna be good. I'm doing well. Just still getting ready for the new job, and I've been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild. I'm picking that game back up because I historically have not liked it.
Oh, he's out.
Yeah, he's probably coming back in to see if we can fix our technical difficulties. But yeah, I've been playing Breath of the Wild, and I historically don't like it.
Yeah, you despise that game.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, Chunko here is my brother.
Brother, roommate, stuff
Roommate.
like that.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan of the weapon durability system. I don't know about
I also don't like how Link looks.
I like him all right. But yeah. Oh, he's back.
Testing. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with my microphone. This will be fine.
Sure.
So you're playing Breath of the Wild again?
Yeah, and I historically have not liked it. I'm not a fan of weapon durability or the food or anything like that. But I have been going through, I've been looking up guides and speed runs and 100% runs just to see what the best path is. Because, and I'm going to talk about this later on, pacing is such an important thing for me in a game. And there really is no pacing to Breath of the Wild. It's just not the type of game it is. And so I kind of have to read up and see what the best, okay, so I need to go here. And once I reach this point, I go in here, buy this armor, and you'll be set for probably the next half of the game. Perfect. Awesome. Do I need to do all the divine beasts up front? Do I need to get all the memories up front? I'm trying to disperse those. The biggest mistake that I made in my initial playthrough, which I've never completed the game.
To be fair, I've never completed the game. I still love it.
I tried to go for the Master Sword first, just so I didn't have to deal with the weapon durability. But now I'm just powering through weapon durability, just so that way I can.
So Breath of the Wild, I've always said this. I think Breath of the Wild is a fantastic game. One of the best games ever made. It is not a Zelda game.
Right.
And but I do love it. I am looking forward to the sequel. The thing about Breath of the Wild is I haven't played it in a while, but I could, I've put several hours in that game. I could pick it up right now and go somewhere and find something brand new that I have never seen before. And we've been all over that map. And I always find something new. It is ridiculous the amount of content that is in that game.
Yeah. You'll always find one Korok seed that your friend didn't find.
Yeah, it is
at least one.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're one of the maniacs that collected them all, I don't know why you would do that.
I'm trying to, because I'm a completionist. I'm trying not to be a completionist with this game because I'll never stop playing it.
Yeah, I mean this is a game that was not designed for completionists. There's a, I don't know if you've ever seen this. There's a Twitch streamer. I think his name's Crystal Saver, I want to say,
I haven't seen them.
and he does a lot of like Zelda randomizers and stuff. He has done several streams where he's beaten the whole game blindfolded. But I sat there and watched him do all the practice streams, and he's like counting how many jumps. So he hits this wall. Okay, now I got to jump this me to the right. Da, da, da. Okay, I should be at the shrine.
Mm-hmm.
It is bonkers.
Yeah.
And just him invading Ganon's castle and everything. It's just, and fighting Ganon. It's just wild.
Right.
Blindfolded, completely blindfolded, and he'll get stuck sometimes and have to call it on the run because he can't figure out why he's missing the shot or whatever. But it is pretty wild to watch.
Yeah, I've watched Super Mario 64 blindfold runs.
Yeah, I feel that one, I hate to say easier, but it would be less challenging, I would think, because it's pretty much point A to point B.
Yeah.
It's also a shorter game.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, there's so many variables and creature spawns and just everything going on that.
Well, and not just that, and this has become the Breath of the Wild stream. The not the graphics, the engine, the physics engine it's not unpredictable, but it's definitely like deeper than any other game I've ever seen. Like there's some things that I've tried to replicate and I just can't make it happen.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, such an interesting game. But like you said, that is not the stream for the night. We are talking about video games we love. That's just not one of the ones that is on our list.
That is my favorite Zelda game, but that's because I like the Zelda games from the NES era, which Breath of the Wild took inspiration from.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just because I like the openness of it.
Yeah. I like it that it harkens back to the first Zelda game, because the first Zelda game, you could really walk up to any dungeon. You wouldn't be able to beat them right away, but you could walk up to any dungeon as soon as you start the game, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you went back and got the other weapons, but you couldn't beat them. But it kind of gave you freedom, and that's kind of what the goal of Breath of the Wild was to restore that freedom. So let's get into some news here real quick before we get started with the topic. Last Friday, finally saw the release of the Rescue Rangers movie on Disney Plus. Rescue Rangers was a big, I say big, I was as a kid it seemed big, show back in the 90s, part of the Disney Afternoon, starring Chip and Dale, the Disney chipmunks. And they would solve crimes, they would rescue people, solve mysteries. It was a fun little show. I don't know, were you all Rescue Ranger fans, or was that like after your time?
Yeah, that definitely wasn't something. Like I know Chip and Dale, but like from their cameos in other things, like in Kingdom Hearts or House of Mouse.
Yeah, I also didn't really watch Chip and Dale. Not a whole lot of Disney Afternoon shows, with the exception of DuckTales and a little bit of Darkwing Duck. But I do respect Chip and Dale just for being one of the big originators of Saturday morning cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
It did like, I won't say it started a lot of stuff, but it solidified a lot of Saturday morning tropes.
Well, and you say Saturday morning. It was actually, and this was before your time, the Disney Afternoon. It was a Monday through Friday type thing in the afternoons. It was DuckTales, Gummy Bears, and then they added in Chip and Dale later. And then we got stuff like Aladdin and Darkwing Duck and so on. And Gargoyles, but we will not derail this into a Gargoyle stream. You don't really have to know anything about the old show to watch this movie. They do a pretty good job of explaining what Rescue Rangers was. And this is basically a modern Roger Rabbit movie is what this is.
Okay.
Where they're kind of living in this world where toons and humans coexist, and they were actors who were playing a role on Rescue Rangers. And this is several years later, and they've kind of gone their separate ways, and you find out why the show was canceled and all this, that type of thing. And then a mystery starts, and you have to solve it. What makes this movie so interesting is if you are a fan of properties from the 80s, they are going to pop up everywhere in this movie. I don't want to give the major one away. There is a big one, but it's been all over the internet.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it has to do with a certain movie that people were not happy with at first, and he's in the movie quite a bit, actually. I'll just say that.
Like he's in it like more than you'd think. It's less of a cameo, more of just like a recurring character.
He's in 3 or 4 scenes. Yeah, he
Wow.
popped up quite a bit. And it's a pretty funny gag. They make fun of it quite a bit. This was made by the Lonely Island guys. So there's some pretty funny jokes in there. I won't say it's like the greatest movie of all time, but I definitely think it is worth checking out. What is unbelievable is just as, back in the day in Roger Rabbit, you couldn't believe that, Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse were in the same movie together. And I'll go ahead and spoil these two. Batman appears at one point in the movie, and Tigra, which is an Avenger, a Marvel character, they're on the screen at the same time, but they both appear in this movie. And to my knowledge, this is the first time we've ever seen a Marvel character and a DC character in the same movie. I'm trying to rack my brain. I know Lego Movie had Star Wars characters and Batman in the same movie, but it wasn't Marvel characters.
Right.
That's probably
and
the
of
closest
course, and of course, there's been plenty of crossover within comic books.
Right. But since Disney and since Disney acquired Marvel, I think this is the first time we've seen something like this.
Yeah, probably. When they acquired them, like 2011, 2010, something like that.
That seems about right. Because Iron Man was 2006 or somewhere around there.
Iron Man was 2008.
2008. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Because they had a few movies. But yeah, some very surprising cameos. And they're just kind of everywhere. I mean, it's not like constant, but if you're just kind of paying attention, you'll be like, oh, there's Dobby in an ad from Harry Potter. What is that in the background? You're just like, wait a second. So yeah, if you like cameos, this is a lot of fun. There's even a Snoopy reference in the movie. I was just like, wait, what? I don't know how Disney pulled this off, what kind of deals they had to make in the background, their legal team and stuff, the hoops.
Well, it's probably like, I'm Disney.
There's a person dressed as Ash Ketchum at one point. It's just like so many references, so many favors had to be called in. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So if you like cameos, just for that, this is definitely worth the watch. The plot's not bad. So I would definitely recommend checking this out. I will spoil this. In the end credits, you know how modern movies will show like all these fun images during the credits?
Yeah.
One of them's of a fake game that's supposed to be like Smash Brothers, but the Disney Afternoon. I can't remember what it was called. It was, something like Disney Afternoon Brothers or something with all the characters jumping out.
That's cool.
I would play the heck out of that game. It had like Goliath on the box art and Scrooge McDuck and everybody, and I was just like, oh, I would have played that to death. We could talk about that too. Let me I'm gonna throw this on here on Audible.
Multiverses.
I may be spelling this wrong. Let's switch to that right now. That definitely is not how you spell it. Let me.
No, it's versus like.
Yeah. But we started to see, man, that's the wrong thing. Also, if that's not the spelling, that's pretty close.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty much.
This is going to be it's a free to play, I believe. Once it finally gets released,
I think so.
But we're starting to see more of the roster. And it's a weird roster. I don't know if you all have seen it.
Oh yeah. We've so in our fighting game Discord, everyone's loving it. Everyone's playing like Taz and Rain Dog. I don't even like Game of Thrones, but Arya Stark is my girl.
Yeah,
which is kind of insane. That
is in. Is it Shaggy? It doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
And no, it's like,
made,
okay,
Ultra Instinct Shaggy canon.
Right.
He even grabbed Scorpion in the Mortal Kombat movie. Like the animated one.
Right.
And he's like, get over here, man.
Yeah.
Both with green energy.
It's so ridiculous how memes are finding their way into the canon, But yeah, the fact that Arya from a live action show is in this is kind of like, okay, well, what's off limits at that point? We're gonna get Sopranos characters. Are we?
I think Gandalf is supposed to be in it too.
Saw some leaked characters. Gandalf's in it, like the Wicked Witch of the West, and LeBron James, which whatever. But yeah, like a lot of interesting characters. There's also some brand new characters, which I don't know why bother with that. It's like no one's going to care about those.
Hey, you need to have the Ruby heart of every crossover game.
Yeah, it's just odd that they're just throwing in
the character that if you don't know any of these characters,
I think one
I want to hang on to that.
Yeah. So I'm definitely interested in this one. I'm looking forward to this. There's a couple of games I'm looking forward to. Shredder's Revenge is another one that I'm really hyped about. I don't know if you all have been following that, but it's like a classic TMNT side scroller beat 'em up.
Oh yeah, so it's like the arcade game.
Yeah, and it's got like a lot of fun references, like their screenshots where Bebop and Rocksteady have taken over like Channel 6 News.
Oh, that's funny.
So there's all these TVs in the background of all the new TV shows. So like there's one of like Bebop doing a cooking show and one of him doing a ShamWow commercial and stuff. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that one.
All right, let's go ahead and get this hot take out of the way. The first game is better than Turtles in Time. Good night.
I'm not a huge Turtles in Time fan.
I think the SNES version is better.
Yeah, and by first game, I assume you're meaning the first arcade game and not the first Nintendo game.
Right. The first arcade game, yeah.
Yeah, the first arcade game is pretty incredible.
I mean, like it's got the classic Turtles scene. Like it's adapted in every, in the movies, in TV shows. It's always there. April's apartment being on fire.
Yeah. There's certain tropes from the first comic books that they repeat over and over, and that is definitely one of them. Them going out to Northampton Woods is another one, though that's not the games, but yeah. Oh, we gotta do a turtle show soon. I love Ninja Turtles. All right,
I'll do Usagi Yojimbo.
Right. One last piece of news, and this is not my department. This is you guys. Final Fantasy IX anime. Go ahead, Caleb. Tell us about that one.
Yes. So this is pretty big because I think we all can agree that video game adaptations are getting better. It really all started with Castlevania. Once Castlevania hit, like people started to get it, and then we got like Mortal Kombat movies, like the animated movies that are really good. I like
Detective Pikachu.
Detective Pikachu, and I like the first season of The Witcher. I have not seen this season 2, but I've heard it's not popular. But anyway,
The Witcher is a book series, not a game series.
That's true. You've got me there. But you know what I mean. And so with something like Final
the
Fantasy,
biggest example of like,
Sonic, of course, yes. And so with Final Fantasy is ripe for adaptation in anime. And we just haven't gotten one. And honestly, I know everyone thinks about 6 and everyone thinks about 7, 10, all them for adaptations. I think 9 actually is the perfect one to adapt, because after games like 6, 7, and 8, which were like these complicated sci-fi stories, 9 was kind of their return to form. And I mean, it wasn't a simple story, but it started out simple. And so this is going to be premiering at some festival here in the next couple of weeks. I can't remember which festival it is, but here we go. Licensing Expo in Las Vegas, and so that will be premiering there. And then at that point, we'll get some decent feedback, and I'm really hopeful for this. I think this is going to be a Netflix series.
So we canceled.
They've gotten video games. Yeah, I know. They've gotten video games in animation right. I know that you have spoken the gospel of Arcane numerous times. I am not a League of Legends guy, but even I am interested in watching Arcane at some point.
Yes, Arcane is fantastic. One of the best things I've seen in a long time. Well, until I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that's a whole other stream.
I'll watch it eventually, and we'll have a spoiler cast.
Awesome. All right, so let's Netflix, I don't know, there's a lot of turmoil at Netflix right now.
Yes, with all the Chappelle stuff.
Well, not even that. They're layoffs and them shutting down departments and stuff. So
renewing Big Mouths again.
I used to love Big Mouth, but it's gone on for too long. Nobody's in puberty for that many years.
The Rugrats were babies forever. You know, I guess they did eventually grow up. I'll take that back. Yeah. So anyhow, let's move on to our main topic tonight. One of the things that we want to do on this podcast or live stream is just to celebrate the things that we love and maybe introduce a new audience to them that have never experienced us before. So that's part of why we have Chunko tonight. That would be fun to talk about some of our absolute favorite video games of all time. And a lot of these games, these are not modern games. These are, when I sit there and think about it, these are all, 10, 20 years old, I guess. When did Metroid Prime come out? That was what?
Its 20th anniversary is this year.
Yeah, so these are all these games are over 20 years old, which is crazy. Time is flying. So tonight we're going to each pick one. We're each going to take turns picking our favorite game of all time. So I'm going to go first. Talk about one of my favorite games. It's from the Super Nintendo era. And I know a lot of people have heard about it now, but it was obscure for a long time. And that is Earthbound.
Oh yeah, that's Ness from Smash Brothers, right?
Right. This is where most people know it from. Yeah. The weird kid with the baseball hat. I was introduced to Earthbound. I was in high school in the mid 90s, and had some friends over, and they brought some video games. And my friend Michael and Denny, they popped in this game Earthbound, and I was like, "What is this?" And they kept showing me these funny moments in it and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, can I borrow this?" And they're like, "Sure." And I fell in love with this game. It is, um, it's just but it's a you play as Ness, as you all mentioned, and he is a kid who he lives in a neighborhood called Onet, and he one night there's like a meteor crash, and so they go out to investigate, and that's kind of where the game starts. You and your neighbor kid Pokey, you go out to investigate, and from the future named Buzz Buzz, who looks like a bee,
But he's not a bee.
and but he's not a bee, right? And from there, you're just starting this huge quest, and then you start making friends. So your team is Paula, Jeff, and Pooh, and you go on this just adventure. You travel from town to town, and this huge quest opens up. Your neighbor Pokey, on the other hand, he kind of chooses a darker path, on the good path. And I think Pokey is one of those great video game villains that nobody ever talks about. Just one of the greats.
Oh yeah, Porky just shines, or Porky. He just shines in Mother 3. As a villain.
Have both of you played Earthbound?
So
this is interesting because I have actually played it, but Caleb hasn't.
No, I have not. I know very little about Earthbound.
I played it on the Wii U when it came out on the Virtual Console.
So let me share some more stuff about the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so did you play the entire game, Cameron, or
Yep.
Chunko? Sorry, did you play the entire game?
Yes, I played the entire game.
Okay, so what do you think about Earthbound? Because you play a lot more RPGs.
Yeah.
So let me just ask.
Yeah, I'm very picky when it comes to JRPGs because a lot of them have the problem with they're either too easy, so I get bored, or too hard, so I would have to grind, and that's also kind of boring. But what I liked about this game was that it was pretty balanced. If you didn't actively run away from fights, you would you would always be the right level. But also, I really liked the tone of the game. It's very different from any other RPG at that time. I know nowadays a lot of RPGs take inspiration from Earthbound, but back in the day, even back in 2012, 2014, it was pretty unique.
Let me ask you this there. For both of you who have played this game, have either of you played Undertale? Now, I have never played Undertale.
I have actually never played Undertale.
I've played bits and pieces of it. I can see where it's drawing inspiration from Earthbound, but it is very different.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the thing about Undertale is that it takes inspirations from 3 big games, 3 games that sort of the Triforce of Undertale. That is Earthbound, Shin Megami Tensei, and Toho. And if you played all 3 of those games, you can see the DNA in each of the sections, each of the fights. You can see okay, there's some Shin Megami Tensei there, there's some Earthbound there. There's definitely a lot of Toho hit right there.
Yeah. So I'm having some connection issues, so I'm gonna talk about Earthbound real quick, and then we'll move on. part of Earthbound that I just love is the humor. Uh, it is a ridiculous game. There are things in this game that you will never see in another video game. Uh, the bad guys are not your typical bad guys. At one point, you're fighting an old guy at the party that refuses to leave, or something like that. There's hippies you have to fight, cult members, just all kinds of stuff. There's zombies, there's aliens, there's a mirror world at one point, dinosaurs. There's just so much going on in this game, and the story it's charming. Some of it's sad, or the Mother 3 is much sadder. And I still need to finish Mother 3.
Are you playing it on an emulator?
There's no other way to really play it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you could read Japanese.
Well, they English translate. Yeah, so I just love this game. There are moments where the game breaks the fourth wall. It starts talking to you, the player, which is wild. Like, you'll just do it at random times. There is a photographer that randomly appears and just takes your picture, and those pop up later in the credits, and they're accurate to whatever you were doing at that point. Like, when I played, I had several members of my team that were dead in certain pictures. That's funny. They were dead in the pictures.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments of Earthbound is there's a waterfall with a door in it, and you're instructed to put the controller down and not touch it for like 5 minutes. That's how you open the door.
Yeah, and it
tells
and
you
it is 5 minutes.
Face. They tell you it to your face.
I love puzzles like that. Like, I don't know if that's actually like a puzzle in
they just tell you.
Okay. But stuff like that's super cool. Like, honestly, one of my favorite things, and I call this my favorite Zelda puzzle of all time. So spoilers for Phantom Hourglass. And if you don't want to know, skip ahead like a minute or so. So you have to stamp something, and so the stamp is on your top screen, and so it doesn't explain to you how to stamp it. And so what you have to do is you close your DS, and then you open it, and then you have stamped it on the bottom screen.
There is I can't remember what it's called. It's like Daffy Duck Amuck or something, where all the puzzles in the game are like that. Stuff like where you have to shut the DS or do different things.
I found that one out on accident because like I legit couldn't figure it out. And so then I'm just like, I'll come back to this later. So I closed my DS. I opened it back up like an hour later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
So a couple more things about Earthbound real quick.
Yes.
Yeah. The music is outstanding. One of the best video game soundtracks. And then there's some stuff, and like I said, Chunko has played more.
Yeah, people
JRPG. So I maybe might have a heat stroke or you're homesick. That's very unique. So I don't see those in a lot of games, so you may see it more, but just some really weird effects that your character might get. It's just an amazing game.
One of the effects is actually homesickness.
Yeah.
You have to call your mom.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. The lot to say, and even after you beat the game, everybody has more to say. And they are still finding hidden dialogue in this game to this day.
The epilogue can be like over 2 hours long if you let it.
Yeah, you can go back and talk to everybody.
Everyone has a conclusion.
Yeah, and speaking about the ending of the game, it is. I won't spoil it, but it is absolutely one of my all-time favorite final battle moments. And I won't say what happens, but it's just always stuck out in my mind. It's just amazing. Um, so yeah, I love Earthbound. We didn't really talk about the battle system. It's typical take turns attacking the monster type battle
One good
system.
one thing I do like about it, that's another thing I got reminded of. Two things. One, the sort of rotary system or something like that, where your health ticks down. Like, if you take a fatal hit, you still have time to actually heal yourself, and you'll get that health back.
Or you can end the battle fast enough that it doesn't go all the way down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing I really like about Earthbound is that this is something that Smash Brothers doesn't really get, but Ness is actually the healer of the group. He's the white mage,
Yeah,
which
that is true.
it's pretty unconventional for pretty much every RPG because you expect, oh, Ness, he's like the one with like he's either the fighter the uh or the like the mage, but no, he's the quintessential healer of the group. Like, you could argue that he's a paladin, but it's just
Earthbound,
very.
I believe, currently available on Switch.
Oh yes, yes, it is available on Switch, as well as its prequel, Earthbound Beginnings, which is also just Mother One.
Yeah, and that's on my list to play. I've not played Earthbound Beginnings. That is on my list to play. Um, I highly recommend that people give this a chance and don't just play it for 5 minutes. Start off. You really got to give it some time to grow on you. But it is an incredible game.
I will say, I heard that Earthbound Beginnings is a lot harder to get into.
Have you not played it?
So
I thought you played it.
I played Earthbound Beginnings for like 5 minutes and I couldn't. It was too old. It's very,
Yeah, I've heard that it definitely needs a remake or retooling or something. That
very much an NES RPG.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to turn the show over to Caleb, who's hopefully having better connection issues than I am. Caleb, what is your favorite game of all time?
All right, so I feel like I have the most difficult thing to talk about because with what you're talking about with Earthbound, it's still kind of a yeah, it's still kind of an underground thing that you can still introduce people to, that people still need to play. I myself still need to play it. And then with what Chunka will be talking about, there is an argument that it's the best in its series, but there's also an argument for several other games. For me, my favorite game of all time is here, let me pull that up, is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, there is an argument for, what is the best Zelda game, blah, blah. Everyone agrees that this game is legendary and it changed video games, honestly. Like, it's up there with Final Fantasy VII as one of the greatest games of all time.
I would, if I could just jump in, I would compare it to Mario 64, which is not the best Mario game, but it changed video gaming forever.
Sure, yeah.
And this had the same effect on the Zelda series and other games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, for me, this is my favorite game of all time. This is my favorite Zelda game of all time. This game is right. That is what I can say firmly, is this game is right. Everything about it. This game is the gold standard. It actually, because of this game, is why my taste in video games was formed in a specific way. Every time I play a video game, I am in some way subconsciously comparing it to this game. The first thing that I would want to talk about is the most important thing when it comes to this game. This game has perfect pacing. I don't think there is a single game other than A Link to the Past. This game and A Link to the Past have the best pacing in any video game ever, in my opinion. And the reason is because they both have the same pacing, because Ocarina of Time kind of takes a lot from A Link to the Past. Now, the reason I like Ocarina of Time more is a reason that we'll get to. But it starts out with you in the forest as Link, and you're the boy without the boy without a fairy. So there's already something weird about you. There's something about you that's just not quite right in the context of the Kokiri village. And so you go into the Great Deku Tree, you kill the curse that was placed upon it, which it ends up dying. Your father figure ends up dying. And then you're placed on this adventure, going for two other of the sacred artifacts, the sacred stones. And then once you collect all those, then the game actually starts. That is my favorite thing, where you have this very conceivable goal, 3 different dungeons to complete, and then the game starts. I love that. This game does that, and Ocarina does it, and A Link to the Past does it. So let's see. The overworld. This is the thing that I use for every D&D session I've ever made. I just use this overworld. It makes so much sense to me that you start out in the Kokiri forest. You can get lost in the Lost Woods, which I still remember the puzzle on how to get through it. It's great. Climbing Death Mountain to reach Goron City, and accidentally going inside Death Mountain without the fire tunic. I still remember all that. Sneaking through the Hyrule Castle to get to Princess Zelda at the beginning. Fishing in Lake Hylia. And and having this Metal Gear Solid thing in Gerudo's Fortress. Just everything about it. I love it. Freeing Epona from Luigi is one of the most cathartic things ever. Yes, that is Luigi. That is
maybe Waluigi, but yes,
yeah.
there is definitely a connection there.
But oh man, that's kind of why I have the overworld here. Because it's my favorite world map in any piece of fiction. B, because it's easy to see things. Traveling through Zora's River is great, of course. What else do I have? Oh, I remember what this one is. The boss fights are some of my favorite. And I still remember Goma. So going through the Great Deku Tree, which is a lot of fun, you have to use stuff like getting a Deku stick and going near a torch to catch it on fire so you can burn up these, and you're not exactly sure what they are, but it's like white and there's holes in it. Who knows what's happening? To climb your way up to the top of the Great Deku Tree, only to jump and fall through the floor, which has been covered by this this white, spongy material. You get the boss key. You walk into this dark room with uh, with smoke on the floor, and you hear something. You got to go into first person mode, look around, look up, and then this eye is looking you in the face, and this parasitic armored arachnid Goma appears. It freaked me out as a kid, but it's so much fun, and every boss fight has this. King Dodongo is great. The little tongue thing in the, like, not the tongue thing, but the jellyfish thing in Jabu Jabu's belly is not that great. But Phantom Ganon's awesome. Volvagia, legendary. Dark Link, Twin Rova, and then of course Ganondorf and Ganon. That's one of my favorite things too, is whenever you're fighting Phantom Ganon, you have to do this sort of volley thing, going back and forth, slashing at his energy beam. And that teaches you how to beat him at the end of the game. It's so cool. I love that. Now I want to talk. I'm a music person, and I want to talk about the eponymous Ocarina. I play guitar. I play piano, bass, and I sing. But the ocarina is the first instrument I ever learned. I specifically remember I wanted an ocarina for Christmas because I loved this game as a kid. And so I got it. It came with a Legend of Zelda songbook, so I could learn some of the greatest hits, like Soraya's song. You have Bolero of Fire, Minuet of the Forest, Song of Time, of course, Serenade of Water, Epona's song, and then I think this was in third grade, my school was having a talent show, and I decided that I was going to play Zelda's Lullaby. And so I played Zelda's Lullaby on the ocarina in front of the whole school. But yeah, once you obtain the Ocarina of Time after getting the three gems, the stones, and going into the Temple of Time. The Temple of Time is such a cool set piece, and I love it. And I want it. If someone adapts Ocarina of Time into a movie, I can already tell you that the Temple of Time will not look right. It just won't. And I will be very specific about it. But using the Song of Time to open the door of time, and then finally getting to pull the Master Sword, and then it's 7 years later. It's insane to me. Like, it's so insane. I remember I was a kid, and I was just blown away because I'm an adult now. I walk out, and the world seems wrong. The Re-Dead are everywhere. It's not daytime anymore. There's something wrong. It's all brown.
Eternally nighttime.
Eternally nighttime, yes. And I mean, it's just insane. And so another thing that I love is going through and You meet all of these characters like Soraya and Ruto, and I'm trying to remember who and Impa, just all these characters, and it turns out that these are the sacred sages that you have to rescue at at these certain temples. Now, my favorite temple of all of these, and I don't know if this is I really don't know people's opinions on this game. I've never really cared to look. I just know I love this game and I love talking about it. My favorite temple in this game is the Forest Temple. Getting through the Lost Woods, using the hook shot to enter the Forest Temple. I believe there are wolves that guard the temple, and just going from using the hook shot to go from place to place, and using arrows, and then fighting Phantom Ganon at the end. Just a lot of fun. In fact, whenever I think of the Forest Temple, I think of staying at your all's place, because whenever I was playing through it for the first time, I was on the Forest Temple and I decided to bring the N64 to your all's place. And so I'm just forever like ingrained in your living room. It's like 11 at night or something like that. The lights are all off, and playing through the Forest Temple. So yeah, that's a lot of fun memories that I love thinking about. Now the biggest thing.
I was going to say real quick. One of the things I failed to mention when talking about Earthbound is one of the reasons it's such a special game to me, and this is a personal reason. My friend Denny was the one who let me borrow it. So he later passed away from cancer several years later. So whenever I think of Denny, this game, to me, they're connected in my head. So that's, and that's one of the things about these video games is there are personal memories of growing up that get attached to them. So it becomes something bigger than the game itself. And
exactly,
Ocarina of Time is not my favorite Zelda game, but I'm not going to poo-poo it because it's your favorite, that's right. Your favorite game. And, so, yeah, these things are special to us on a different level, for personal reasons. So
yeah, definitely. I think I was in a different place for every single dungeon. I just brought the N64 everywhere. And so I have a different perspective on each dungeon because of where I was when I was playing through that dungeon. Which I think is really cool. And yes, absolutely. Like, the whole point of these games is there's something personal about them. And the thing that's really personal to me is I'll get to it here in a second. What I want to talk about is the biggest disappointment in video game history, and that is this thing right here. This thing is,
man.
This thing. So you go as an adult.
First Fetch Quest.
Actually, no. I think you get it as, I can't remember if you get it as an adult or as a kid, but you go to Goron City and you purchase the Giant's Knife, and it's cool. You actually have to put your shield away and you hold it with two hands. This is like Cloud's Buster Sword. And you're ready to use it. 2 swings and it's broken. 2 swings. And so, like, you can still use it as a weapon, but, like, you don't get the range. It doesn't do as much damage as the Master Sword or even the Kokiri Sword. And so that was a big disappointment as a kid. Until one of the greatest fetch quests in video game history. I specifically remember it was probably right after it was before or after I beat the Forest Temple. Not the Forest Temple, the Fire Temple. What you had to do was you had to get this specific thing from Goron City to Lake Hylia in like 4 minutes. And I remember my heart was racing. I had Epona at the time, and that really helped. But you had to get this thing to Lake Hylia in 4 minutes. And if you could complete this fetch quest and get all the materials you needed, you take this knife back to the giant, and he will repair it and give you the best weapon in the game, the big Goron sword. The big Goron sword is what you wanted the giant's knife to be. It did so much damage. It was so cool looking. And at the end of the game, whenever you fight Ganon, the Demon King Ganon, not Ganondorf, he knocks the Master Sword out of your hand, and so you're supposed to fight him with the light arrows. Or if you have the big Goron sword, you can slash him a couple times and beat him in like 30 seconds. The big Goron sword is one of my favorite weapons in gaming history. And so I always have to bring up my experience in getting the giant's knife, my disappointment with the giant's knife, and everything that I wanted from the big Goron sword. I have seen screenshots. I think the big Goron sword is in Breath of the Wild, from what I can tell. And so I'll definitely, whatever I have to do to get it, I'll do it. I don't care. If I have to do however many shrines and Korok seeds and all that, I want to get this sword. It's one of my favorites. Now I want to get to the big reason as to why this is my favorite game. Because everything I've talked about with this game can also be applied to A Link to the Past. This game, for all intents and purposes, can be seen as A Link to the Past. Even though this canonically takes place before A Link to the Past, this can be seen as a remake of A Link to the Past in a certain way. Because the time travel system is just a reworked version of the Dark Road. You get the 3 pendants or stones, and then you have to go and get the other 5 dungeons and rescue these people so that way you can fight the final boss at Hyrule Castle. The big Goron sword is very similar to the magic golden blade from A Link to the Past. There's master, and there's mirror shields, and there's hook shots. They're very similar games. The reason that I love this game more than A Link to the Past, and I'm going to say this and then I have to explain it. It's because it's in 3D. Now, this does not have anything to do with like, oh, newer is better, 3D is better. With this being in 3D, my thing with A Link to the Past is you can't tell how young Link actually is. Like they tell you how young Link is, but you can't tell. In this game, Link is a child. Link is 10 years old, and he's this 10-year-old whose father figure has died, was killed by the King of Thieves, Ganondorf. And he goes to all these great places, sneaks through castle guards to find the princess, and the princess gives him this mission. And then finally, whenever you pull the Master Sword and it's 7 years later, you're this 17-year-old. But the thing is for him, no time has passed. This 17-year-old is still just that 10-year-old. And so finally at the end, whenever everything's done and Zelda sends him back, when Zelda sends him back to be a kid, he's really not a kid anymore. He's been through so much that, his experiences in Majora's Mask and what he would eventually become in Twilight Princess, it all makes sense. And so that's why I really enjoy this. And the biggest thing that I love about this game is at the beginning of the game, when you walk out of Link's house, you climb down the ladder, and on the side, you can see a drawing carved on the side of his treehouse. And it looks like a swordsman with a hat similar to Link fighting against a beast with a fairy. Because that's all he ever wanted was to go on an adventure and have a fairy companion. He gets his fairy companion and he fights that beast. This final boss is one of the easiest final bosses I have ever fought. And yet it is one of the most important because it's the whole reason for the game. At this point, Link is grown up. That's why I love this game, is because it is just a perfect hero's journey, a perfect coming of age story. That's why the pacing is so important, because with Link's coming of age, there has to be a specific pace for it. Now, this is actually not the only way you can experience this game. I've experienced this game in many ways. There is not a movie or a TV show or anything. However, when I was a kid, probably about 10 or 11, I found this manga. And this was the first manga that I ever read. And it was confusing because you have to read it backwards. But part one is that first half, which I'd say you probably make it up to the Forest Temple or Fire Temple. I can't remember specifically where it ends off. And then part two is most of the adult. And then having to go back and forth, of course, which is honestly is one of the coolest things about the Spirit Temple. Is the Spirit Temple, you actually have to go back and forth between child and adult. You have to go back to solve certain puzzles, which is a really cool idea. So that is another way you can experience it. And of course, another one of my favorites. For anyone who is familiar with the YouTuber Nate Wants to Battle, who does all these video game covers and anime OST covers, he did an entire concept album called Songs of Time, which is it's not like an opera or anything, but it is a concept album where each song represents a certain point in the game. One of my favorites being Hero of Our Time. Hero Over Time. It kind of just encapsulates the whole game. But really, I think it is as he's leaving Kokiri Forest to go on this adventure. That's what Hero Over Time is about. Another one of my favorites is Drowning. I love Drowning, which is about the water temple. Which, another hot take, I like the water temple. It's not a slog, but it's really good.
They over like hate it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Navi too.
Right. Navi and the water temple are not as annoying as people say. And then there's one called I think it's called The Evil King or something like that. I can't remember what the song's called, but it actually uses the Gerudo theme as the melody for the chorus, which is super cool. But yeah, that is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This is my favorite game of all time. I could talk about this forever. And anytime a game wants to reference it, I'm all for it. I love Twilight Princess because of Ocarina of Time.
I think it's interesting that this is one of your favorite Zeldas. One of my favorite Zeldas is Link to the Past, and that was, you were talking about playing this game as a child, and this was kind of same thing for me playing as a child. And a big part of that was the Nintendo Power comic that ran through it, the Link to the Past manga. If you've never read this, it is a great manga, a great retelling of A Link to the Past. So just as you were saying that the manga for Ocarina of Time, I highly recommend this one. And they have collected it in a nice little book. You get it on Amazon.
Yeah, I recommend. So they have a manga at this point of almost every Zelda game.
They've just completed the Twilight Princess manga.
Yeah, I recommend some more than others. But yeah, Twilight Princess is a really good one as well. But I have read that Link to the Past one. I am a fan and I love it.
Yeah, that's a big part of my childhood, was reading that one in the Mario World, Nintendo Power every month. I still have the original issues where they were collected, and just like I said, a big part of my childhood. And I think that's great. So let's talk about our final game. We'll turn this over to Chunko. Chunko, what is your favorite video game?
All right, so my favorite game of all time. This is one that it took me quite a bit to like figure out which one would be like my favorite. But I think I've decided on Metroid Prime. It was between either this and Super Metroid, and my general consensus is objectively speaking, Super Metroid is better. But objectively speaking, Metroid Prime is my favorite. Now, when I first played Metroid Prime, I think I was like 5 or 6 years old.
It was something like that.
When we got our GameCube, it came with Metroid Prime and a demo of Metroid Prime 2. So basically, my first game on the system that I played was Metroid Prime. And let me tell you, that game was not like
it scared us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, going through the frickin' Orpheon at the beginning, like it was. Oh, you have that up? Awesome. We're going straight into it. It was freaky. Which, by the way, I don't know if anyone else can sympathize with this. When he and I were growing up, we had like a shared save file. So
yeah, that was our thing. We just like shared save files for some reason.
I'd show up and I'm like, oh, he got the Varia suit. Cool.
And vice versa. My brother got the gravity suit.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I experienced Metroid Prime in a very innocent perspective. I was a bit of a scaredy cat, like in my younger years. Like if anything was remotely scary, I just like shut it off. I don't want anything to do with it. But since it was one of the only GameCube games we had at the time, we kind of had to push through. And one thing I love about this game is its beginning. It has a very cinematic beginning. You start off with a distress signal on this space in this research facility in space on Town 4. And then you soon discover it's inhabited by space pirates who were experimenting with this mysterious substance known as phazon. And it has a fairly slow build up at first. At first you just see like the corpses of the space pirates, and then you see wounded space pirates, and then you see back to corpses, but they're a lot more mangled. And then at the end of like this huge hallway, like all these hallways, you meet the parasite queen, who was basically the cause of all this destruction and the distress signal. So you take down the uh, the parasite queen, and you think, okay, and then you get your first escape sequence. Well, it's actually the only escape sequence in this game, which is kind of a problem, but But during that escape sequence, you find Meta Ridley, and that's what jumpstarts the plot, is investigating why the heck is Ridley here, and what do the space pirates want to do with this mysterious planet? And then you land, and you may make it to Talon, like the Talon overworld. Now, one of the things I love about this game is, especially back in the day, the level of immersion that you had. Like Samus is not just a floating gun like in other FPSs. She she has weight. She pretty much everything that you can do that you interact in the world interacts within the game. And the Talon overworld's a big example of it, because if you actually look up, the actual raindrops will actually fall onto the visor. There's countless other examples of it. For instance, the classic is no.
Real quick, speaking of looking up, your experience for Metroid Prime is very different from mine, because whenever I think of Metroid Prime, I'm definitely thinking of a game controller holding L to have free aim, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I played through it twice, because so the first time I played through it, it was on the GameCube with a shared profile, like you said. But in order to prepare for Metroid Prime 4, I played through it again on the Metroid Prime trilogy, which had the Wiimote controls, so I can basically look around like it's an actual FPS. And it actually does have like a slightly different feel to it. You probably know that from like playing Corruption, right, Caleb?
Yes. It definitely feels better, honestly.
But yeah, one of the big things I love about this game is its immersion. Like you see here, whenever you shoot a big blast at a enemy up close, you actually see the reflection of Samus's face within the visor. And another big example is with the beams. Now, these symbols might not seem very like important to you, at first glance, but these are actually like hand motions for how Samus actually activates each beam combo. And if you had the X-ray visor, which is a power up you get later on, you can actually see they match for the her hand actually matches depending on which beam she's actually using at that point, which is actually pretty cool.
It's one of my favorite things that I never figured it out on my first playthrough. Yeah.
That was something I actually did discover on my own. I was like messing around with the game, and I noticed, hey, when I use the X-ray visor and switch beams, Samus' hands actually move. Then I realized, oh my gosh, she's actually like doing those symbols are actually hand motions. So actually, when I was a little kid, when I was like pretending to be like Samus or whatever, I would actually replicate my like the actual hand motions when I'm switching to a different beam. Which some of them were a bit unintuitive, like the ice beam where you had to do like the devil hand motion. The wave beam was easy; it was just like hands wide open. But yeah, another good thing about the frigate Orpheon, that's the beginning level, is that you had a lot of Samus's abilities right then and there, so you can get a feel for how, just like a little taste on how Samus is going to be playing as, towards the middle of the game. But during the countdown sequence, explosion happens and she loses like all of her abilities. And I know it's a bit of an infamous moment within like the Metroid franchise as a whole, but it's a way for you to actually want to get those abilities back as soon as possible. Which what makes the Chozo Ruins, pretty interesting, because the whole narrative of the Chozo Ruins is basically getting yourself back up to how you were in the beginning of the game to a point. Like by the end of the Chozo Ruins, you have almost every single power up you had at the beginning of the game, with the exception of the grapple beam. And then immediately after that, you go straight into Magmore Caverns. Now, Magmore Caverns, that was one of the funnest like levels I played when I was a kid. Just hopping from one little lava thing to another, and like when you're a kid and you just play like games like not even with the objective, just messing around, just like treating it as a playground. This was my like playground right here, Magmore Caverns. But immediately after that, this is something I love about I both love and hate about the original Metroid Prime. It gives you a taste of all the worlds almost immediately. So not even like an hour in, you go from Magmore Caverns to Pendrana Drifts.
Real quick, I want to talk about this for a second. We've all played this game, right? Like I know Chunko has Final Monkey. Have you played through this game?
I started to. I was trying to get 100%, and there's one point where there's a cloaked villain, and there's one that has a malfunctioning cloak that you're supposed to scan. And he got stuck in the doorway, and I couldn't scan him, and I couldn't go forward without killing him. And I got so mad that I couldn't scan him that I quit playing.
So
I will say one big flaw of this game is that 100%ing like all the scans. By the way, a big part of this game is the scan visor, where you can scan pretty much the entire environment from enemies to doors to bits of lore pieces, and then you get a little something out of it. But in order to 100 almost everything, and this game in particular, there are certain enemies that just like only show up once and never again. So I totally feel you on that one, Monkey.
It was just very frustrating.
Yeah. So the reason I asked this, because I want to poll. Phendrana Drifts is the best overworld, right?
I mean, it has the best music.
It does. It's so relaxing. What I like about it is like every other overworld music is kind of aggressive in some way, but Phendrana Drifts kind of like lulls you.
Peaceful.
It's peaceful. It honestly, I think so. Once again, I love pacing. I think this is the best form of pacing because you're in Magmore Caverns, which is the classic Brinstar depths.
Well, not Brinstar depths, but the Ridley. It has the Ridley song.
That's right. It's got Norfair going on.
Yeah, Norfair.
That's what it is. And it, like, there's fire everywhere. It's so dark, and
the bass is like probably
right. And then Phendrana Drifts is just nice, serene.
It just blows you back in, and then you get eaten by xenomorphs.
Oh, that's right.
Those things were creepy.
Yeah.
Just when I was starting to start to be a bit more brave about this game, those things brought me right back to being scared. But then I got the wave beam, and then it was okay.
All right, what were they called? Sheegoth. That's what they were called. The Sheegoth.
Yeah, the Sheegoths. But yeah, that is something I actually do want to ask you, Monkey. You played Super Metroid, right?
Yes. It was only very recently, though, that I completed the game. But yes, I have played through it.
All right, from your perspective, like, what was like Metroid Prime like when it was first like being like announced and released? Because there was a lot of controversy for Metroid Prime at first because it was the first Metroid game in like 8 years, and it was going to be a first-person shooter by a Western developer. That's a recipe for disaster.
So I was a big fan of probably my favorite Metroid game, just because it was the one I had as a kid, was Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. I played that like nonstop on the Game Boy, just because that's just what I had.
we don't mention that game around here.
I like Metroid 2.
But I mean, it's what I had. I didn't know Super Metroid. I didn't.
I know.
So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Metroid. When I was a kid, I rented the first game, and I got really frustrated by it because some boss hit me or bad guy, and they like killed me instantly, and I was just mad. You know, I was like, I had plenty of energy, and I just quit playing it. You know, I was a little kid. But I really enjoyed Metroid 2. So I remember this being a big deal when this was. I remember all the rumors and all the issues they were having at Retro Studios. Now they come in and fire a bunch of people and restart the project. And I was really big into IGN back in that day. I think it was probably still N64.com or IGN64 at the time. But I remember this being very controversial. But at the time, I wasn't the biggest Metroid fan, so I thought it was, I'm all for taking things in a different direction, try something new. You don't want it to get stale. And I think that's one of the things they do with the Zelda franchise, for better or worse, is they're always trying to introduce a new gimmick. So I think, this is the same thing. We're trying something new. We're trying to bring this to a 3D world. And I think it was very successful with what it did, So
absolutely. And this is another thing that I got reminded of because during we as you explore the Phendrana drifts, you actually find some space pirate laboratories where you discover they're making Metroids again, and not just that, they're trying to reverse engineer Samus's like power stone technology. And this brings up two both one of my favorite parts about this game and my least favorite part about this game. I don't have photos for it, but one of my least favorite parts about this game is the color coded space pirates. So as you play through the game, you get different beam power ups, and you can switch between them on the fly. They have different colors. Actually, if I could back to this, there's different colors. There's yellow, purple, blue, and red. And since the space pirates recreated all these power ups, all these beams, uh, they're now color coded, and now they can only be killed by those respective power ups. It's fun at first, not very fun like by the end of the game. Let's just put it lightly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. We didn't have a rant of the week. Let's have a rant of the week.
Oh yeah, color
Game
coded enemies.
game developers, stop it. It's never fun.
They did it in Metroid Prime. They did it in
DMC.
Devil May Cry. They did it in the new God of War. It's not fun. It's not. Whenever you restrict any options you have, it's immediately not fun.
Or when you have to kill enemies in a certain order and you miss one, you have to start all over.
Right.
That sort of
Yeah.
thing. It's such a pain.
Like
Your
that
combat should
thing
be
is
fun enough for me to not have to. I like
Yeah.
that you put it down there. Your combat should be fun enough that you don't have to do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's one thing that Metroid Prime 2 really did fix, is that the beams are a lot more intuitive in that game. So you start off with the standard power beam, the yellow one, but then you get the dark beam and the light beam, respectively. Actually, this is the dark beam, and this is this one is light beam, the plasma beam. There's no wave beam in Metroid Prime 2. But what makes that game fun is that you actually have ammunition. So you actually have to strategize on whether using the stronger beams for certain enemies or conserve it for later and just use the power beam. But it never feels like a chore. Like they're just spongy enough where you would want to use the more powerful beams, but not enough where if you run out of it, it's not the end of the world. The game's also a lot harder too. Like objectively speaking, I think Metroid Prime 2 is a better game. But one thing that Metroid Prime 2 doesn't have over Metroid Prime, one thing that Metroid Prime has over Metroid Prime 2 is that the start of the game is so much better in Metroid Prime 1. Because Metroid Prime 2, you're just stuck in deserts for like 3 hours. 3 to 5 hours. It's a pain. But with Metroid Prime 1, you go from a forest to a desert to a lava place and then to Phendrana Drifts, a tundra. And my second and my other and back to my other thing, my favorite part about this game is the lore. I love all the pros that you get in this game, like all the little bits of lore. And this is the game that really turned the space pirates, like the Metroid space pirates, into space orcs, like Lord of the Rings style space orcs, like like a monkey. When they were talking about recreating all of Samus's like power ups, they managed to reverse engineer every single power up with the exception of one. the Morph Ball. Every time they tried to recreate it, casualties were made.
Right.
They attempted it multiple times, and they shelved the project.
I'm a huge lore junkie in video games. Like that's my favorite part of Mortal Kombat. Just anything. I love getting into the details. So let me ask you this: you two are much bigger Metroid fans than I am.
Yes.
Has Metroid Other M just been written off, or is it still considered largely part of the lore?
It's canon, but
it is still canon, but no other game references it.
Okay.
Like
it's
they lightly reference that.
Yes, I think Dread makes some sort of reference to it, but that's because Dread makes a reference to every Metroid game. That's kind of the whole point of it. Which, for those of you who don't know, my second favorite game of all time is Metroid Dread, which would make it my favorite Metroid game.
Yeah, I still need to play that.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
It does.
It has beautiful pacing.
And it does my favorite thing when it comes to lore, because my favorite thing when it comes to lore, and I like to call this the Soulsborne. It was done before it, but like Soulsborne really gets it. It is lore that you don't have to read, but you see in the world.
I actually think that actually originated in Metroid Prime, because you see how this once luscious world just got destroyed by the substance known as Phazon, which is basically just corium, like radioactive corium. But yeah, continue.
Oh, yeah. And so, so the cool thing about Dread is like you don't get Dread without Prime, but the thing about Dread that I like more, and I agree that Prime is a better game, it's just Dread clicks with me more. With Prime, you not only see it, but you read it. And so you get a little bit more clarification about the lore. With Dread, there's not a whole lot of reading. You just kind of have to see stuff. In the background, there are Chozo
murals.
Yes, not Metroid 2 Return of Samus. You see these Chozo murals with their hieroglyphs on there, and people have actually broken down the language and have read what it says. There are things with Ravenbeak that I find absolutely fascinating. But yeah, like lore is a big thing when it comes to both Metroid and Zelda. It really is.
Metroid's a lot tighter in terms of its lore.
Yes.
Zelda's very fairy tale-esque or mythology, where the lore matters, but don't think too hard on it.
Right. No, the lore in Metroid really is pretty concrete at this point.
I think that that Matt Pat over at Game Theory put Zelda the best. He said, think of these as stories that are being told and retold throughout time, and little parts are getting messed up in the retelling, so they don't quite fit together perfectly.
Right.
It's indeed the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, and that's really what I've said in regards to the split timeline. Which, first of all, I am not a fan of the Fallen Hero timeline. I don't understand it. It should have been just 2 timelines. But in terms of Breath of the Wild, for me, I don't think the timelines combined again. I think that Breath of the Wild is just the inevitability of every timeline. That's the way I view it. And so it's definitely like just stories being told. You don't have to connect them completely. Now, Metroid, definitely has to connect perfectly.
The only real like big lore problems with Metroid, the inconsistencies, is the Space Pirates portrayal from the original Metroid games, like the 2D Metroid games, and the Prime games, since they are a little different. If you remember, the Space Pirates in in Super Metroid, they're like arthropods, very insectoids. While in where is it? Yeah, you see these guys. You know, they're still a little bit arthropodish, but throughout the next couple of games, they just become more and more reptilian, and which begs the question: why are the space pirates looking different? Uh, that's the only big one, and they actually did answer it. You see that basically they're basically two different species, but they're both under the space pirate name. Is the explanation, and that's why they also behave different. Uh, two such instances is the space pirates in Metroid, like Metroid 1 and Super Metroid. They cannot operate without a mother brain or a Ridley operating them. If they don't have a mother brain or Ridley, like basically being the hive mind of it, then they just go into a feral state. They're basically just animals. While the Metroid Prime space pirates are space orcs. Another another bit of lore thing that's also really funny is if you scan one of the space pirate logs. Again, if you just want to have like a fun time, just read all the space pirate logs and all of Metroid Prime, like all 3 games. You will be laughing your butt off at some of these. Another such instance is a space pirate commander basically berating all the space pirates for keeping Metroids as pets. It's like, these are weapons, not pets. Stop feeding them.
That is funny. The idea of keeping a Metroid as a pet is pretty funny.
Yeah. I'll put that right next to my. I'm sure he and my Xenomorph will get along fine.
Right.
And also my like.
Right.
Sure, they'll get along.
Yeah. So we've gone a little long here. So any closing comments on Metroid Prime or?
I will say there is one huge issue with this game.
Okay.
Like, that's right. He does have to talk about this. This is
you cannot talk about Metroid Prime without talking about this. This is the Chozo Artifact Temple. You see, at the end of the game, the true Norfair equivalent, like the last level, is the mining facility. A great level, by the way. And by the end of it, you get the Phazon suit, which is like a black, really edgy looking suit. And you're thinking, all right, now I'm going to take down the Metroid Prime. But it's like, nope. You get a fetch quest. So you remember how Caleb was talking about how great the Great Goron Sword fetch quest was? Polar opposite. This is boring. You have to go all across the map just to get into the end of the game, and it takes about like 2 hours to get all the stuff back. Now, here's the thing: this isn't even the worst version of the Chozo artifacts. Metroid Prime 2 has the worst one, the Sky Temple keys, because at least in this game, you can get a lot of Chozo artifacts early. So it won't be as big of a grind. but with the Sky Temple keys, you can only get like 1 or 2 before you have to do that fetch quest. But then after you get all the keys, you fight Meta Ridley, and it's one of the greatest boss fights of all time. But that is a problem with this game, is it likes to jump back and forth. Now, when you went from Town 4 to Chozo to all these places back to back, it felt great. It felt like you're really exploring places. But then you kind of have to hop back to each place, and it does get kind of repetitive.
So I'm glad you did bring up Meta Ridley. Here's a question. I think the best way to end on Metroid Prime, and this will be an open question. I'll have my own answers as well. Favorite boss fight, favorite beam.
My favorite beam, ooh, it's either the ice beam or the flare or the plasma beam. Like the plasma beam is the classic railgun, like Quake style railgun. But I love the shotgun feel of the ice beam.
I like the plasma beam as well. I like the way you use super missiles in this game is you charge up your beam and then press the missile button, and then it shoots a super missile. But with the other beams, it does something different. With the plasma beam,
it's a flamethrower.
It's a flamethrower, and it's awesome.
With actually the wave beam has the best version of it, where it's literally the Ghostbuster beam.
Oh yeah, the lightning gun. Yeah.
My favorite boss fight is probably Metroid Prime.
Okay, interesting.
And here's the thing about this game, even though like this is a game I've played like pretty much through my entire life. I got into every like I've had different milestones like as I got older. But the thing is on the GameCube, I never beat it. You did, Caleb.
Yes. And okay, interesting thing. The one time that color-coded enemies works is the Metroid Prime boss fight.
Exactly. But when I replayed it, I actually got to fight and beat Metroid Prime, and that was like it felt like a real milestone. Like I truly like grew up. You know, a game where I was like really scared of it, but I slowly got braver and braver until I could just conquer this game and without even trying.
Yeah, and that really does come into the whole idea of like these games are our favorite games, not just because there's because these 3 games are considered some of the greatest games of all time. If there was a Forbes top 100 games of all time, all 3 of them would be on here.
Yeah, all 3 are considered like coming of age games for us.
In a sense, yes. Which, by the way, my favorite boss fight is Thardus the Rock Monster.
Oh yeah,
I love Thardus the Rock Monster.
He was originally supposed to be in Magmore Caverns.
I know. I think he works so much better in Phendrana though. Like, there's just something about that look that's great.
Okay,
well,
so
yeah,
those were our 3 favorite games. We'd love to hear your favorite games down below, whether you agree or disagree with us. We love your comments. Let's get to our last segment. Like I said, we've gone a little long tonight, and I figured we would. To our final segment, He Made Me Do It. This is where we take turns making the other read or watch or play a video game, just different things. Last week, Caleb had a pick, and he had me read Thor GodBomb. Now, admittedly, I had read this before, but it had been like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. So I remembered bits and pieces of it. I remembered Gore's backstory. And I remember there was 3 Thors, but that's about all I remembered.
Last week, whenever I mentioned time travel and you were like, what? I was like, oh yeah, this will be fine. You can read it.
Yeah. Now I will tell you it's a little bit of a blur today because I just went on a reading rampage last week. I read like 75 comic books last week.
Yeah, he's been messaging me all week talking about what's happening in Immortal Hulk.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a book I've been wanting to read. That book looks amazing.
It's interesting. I don't know how I feel about it after I finished it. The first half is great of Immortal Hulk, and then the second half is different.
Funny enough, that's how I feel about the God Butcher and GodBomb.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. This is an alien who he was praying to God and or his gods, and the gods did not answer his prayers, and he just kept losing everybody: his wife, his kids, his tribe members, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's such a good villain origin because it's like and I'm actually kind of curious as to how they're going to, because what they've done in the MCU, Gore's backstory is very Thanos' backstory in the MCU is a little similar.
yeah, I think they're going to have to downplay this. I don't know. We'll see. This seems to be more of a story of Thor not feeling he's worthy and not knowing where his place in life is for the movie. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We'll know more tomorrow when we're getting another trailer tomorrow.
This is the only reason why I am leery about Love and Thunder. So when it came to Ragnarok, it just wasn't my thing, and I know that Ragnarok's important, but I don't have any special connection to it. I love GodBomb. I love Gore the God Butcher, and so I'm super excited for it. But there's so much that they have to get right, and I don't think they will.
So one of the things I did not catch the first time reading, and I don't know if you're supposed to catch it, it kind of comes more apparent with later events in the Marvel Universe, is that he has Null's sword.
Yes.
And that he's attacking with symbiotes. That's what he's attacking with throughout all of this.
Yes.
Which is really cool now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, like I said, I didn't catch it the first time reading it because they didn't really make it super clear.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if this could be setting up Null in the MCU.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the symbiote, spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home, there is a symbiote running around now in the MCU.
That's what I was going to mention.
So they could be playing the long game here and setting all this up. And I kind of hope they are. That would be really cool.
It kind of felt like a Morbius situation where Sony's just like throwing a lot of things at the wall, see what sticks.
I don't know what you're talking about. There were no references to Spider-Man and Morbius whatsoever.
Absolutely none.
They have rewritten history. Yeah, so this story is good. I do know a little bit about Jason Aaron, the writer. He is he would describe himself as an atheist. So I didn't know if he was working through some stuff in this story through Gore, some of his own thoughts about, why do bad things happen to people when they are praying to God and the prayers are not answered and stuff. But overall, I think it's a good story. Thor's one of those characters that I like, but I forget how much I like him until I'm reading one of his stories. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is a cool character,
right? Like, yeah, definitely. That's what I've always thought. Like, have you read any of the Simonson stuff?
I have the omnibus on my shelf, but it is so big that it's impossible to carry around and read. So I've read some of it. I probably need to sit down and read all of it. I'm kind of, now that some of my stuff in my personal life have settled down, I'm going to try to read a lot this summer. That's definitely on the list. but like there's certain characters that you're like, oh yeah, this character's cool. But then once you start reading their stories, you're like, oh yeah, the Hulk is really cool, or Fantastic
Yeah.
Four are really cool. And it's just until you read their stories, you just don't realize how, there's reasons why these characters became popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring this up all the time that when I was a child, my grandfather was really into Popeye. And I was like, I'd watch the old cartoons and I'd be like, I don't get it. This cartoon's dumb. But when you go back and read the actual comic strips from the 30s and 40s, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons why these characters get so popular, but they get kind of watered down through media.
There's a reason why
Mm-hmm.
Oda was like, yeah, I'll make a manga out of this.
Right. So this right here, this is really, I wanted to read this excerpt because Gore the God Butcher is one of my favorite villains in Marvel. Probably my favorite villain to come out in the past. Like to me, he's the best villain of the 2010s for me. And so I wanted to read this excerpt because this encapsulates Gore, and I so want to hear Christian Bale do this monologue. That's what I really want. I just if the movie's bad, the movie's bad. Whatever. If they can just get Christian Bale to do this monologue, I'll be satisfied. In my travels, I have learned that there are two kinds of gods: those who do harm and those who do nothing at all. I have yet to decide which I find more worthy of my wrath. But soon enough, it will no longer matter, as all the gods will have one very important trait in common. They will all be dead.
Yeah. So the big plot of the story is he is creating a bomb that when it goes off will kill all the deities of the Marvel universe throughout time and just wipe them out and let humanity, or I guess not humanity, but let life decide what it's going to do and not be ruled over by these deities. And then Thor has to stop him, but it's not just Thor; it's his younger self, it's his older self. There's 3 different Thors from throughout
It
time.
gets confusing.
I love time travel. I wasn't too confused by it.
Yeah.
But it's you see Thor, the younger one, is more brash. He hasn't become worthy yet. He can't lift up the hammer. The Thor of Avengers, as they call him, the modern day Thor, he's a little bit more level headed.
Yeah. I think at the time he was called Heroic Age Thor because the Heroic Age was going on at the time.
Yeah, but the Thor of the future calls him Thor of Avengers. They keep referring
Oh
to
yeah.
him as,
Oh, gotcha.
yeah.
And
then the
King
future
Thor.
Thor is the King Thor. He's kind of, I don't know if I would say nihilistic, but he's got this very much, oh yeah, you don't know how bad things are gonna get. I've kind of you kind of despondent, the way he acts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably this week I'm going to continue reading the Jason Aaron run. This is one interesting way of, these are questions that humanity has wrestled with about, how God.
The problem with evil.
Yeah, like, why does God allow things to happen and stuff? And this is actually a similar theme that's in Immortal Hulk. Immortal Hulk is basically the story of Job. It gets down to, they keep making comparisons to Hulk and Job about why are all these bad things happening to Banner. These are themes that are also tackled in a little bit different way, because I think the answer to the question they're asking is that who are we to question God? We are we are nothing, He knows better than we, and that's a question that also gets tackled in a series called Good Omens that was on Amazon. Have you seen that, Caleb?
I have not. I have wanted to. It's got a David Tennant, right?
Yes. And I think his name's Michael Sheen is the other one.
Michael Sheen. Yes. I love Michael.
Yeah.
He was I know him as Lucian from Underworld.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to change plans. I was going to have you read Spider-Man Life Story. I'm going to switch. Have you watch Good Omens on Amazon Prime? You have Amazon Prime, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you watch that. We're not sure when we'll be recording next. Just keep an eye on the stream. This month is going to get a little crazy. June, we got graduation, Father's Day, and vacations and everything going on. So our recording schedule might be a little different this month.
Mm-hmm.
Also coming up in June, after the next episode, we are doing a special. He made me do it. We're gonna do some movies that would be considered bombs or not good. Summer stinkers, I guess we could call it.
Yeah.
Those are gonna be really fun. I've already got the first one lined up for Caleb.
Oh, I have had. All right. So this is it. This is the stinger at the end. This is the post credit scene. Here we go. Batman and Harley Quinn.
Okay.
Oh.
I've got a. I'll give you a hint about your first one that you're going to have to watch.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually pretty fun. There's the typical terrorist take over something, and the hero rises up and has to take them out. Your Die Hard trope.
Yeah.
This is going to be something in that vein. That's all I'll say.
You know what? You might have to run that by me because I've seen a lot of those, and so I may have already seen it because I love those kind of movies.
We'll talk off stream and see if you've seen it.
All right.
Yeah, and so some of these I might be nice and let you watch the riff track versions of them. We'll see.
There's no riff tracks version of Batman and Harley Quinn. You will have to make fun of it yourself.
Yeah. One of the and I love bad movies.
In fact.
Yeah, I love bad movies, so this is no big deal. Like I went through a phase where every week I'd pick the weirdest movie I could find on Netflix and watch it. And that got pretty wild.
It's painful.
I still think my favorite. It's not a riff tracks. It was a Mystery Science Theater. The Robot versus the Aztec Mummy.
Oh, that's an old one. Yeah.
And then had Commando Cody and all that.
Commander Cody. Yeah, that's where that character comes from. Yeah, so super cool. I'm looking forward to that. So keep an eye out for the bad movies. Those are coming. But until then, I've been Final Monkey.
And I'm Caleb.
And I've been Chunko.
And we've loved to have you, Chunko. We'd love to have you again on here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so that'll be it for the night. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
See ya.